The Cartoon Guide to Genetics. Part 3. Greek civilization may have been perished, but science marches on. The Greek mantle passed to the Romans, who had little taste to philosophy. They preferred the technology of death to the science of life. The only genetic idea they added was that mare could be fertilized by the wind. In the Middle Ages, science faded further. Theories of heredity gave way to mere lists of monstrous births. Some of these may well be genuine, but what are we to make of stories like half of a cow falling from heaven in a thunderclap? There's always the chance it was just a tall tale, or someone's idea of a joke. One medieval idea especially impeded understanding. It was called spontaneous generation. Originating with the Greeks, this was the belief that living organism could arise, spontaneously, from non-living matter. Maggots were supposed to come from decaying meat. Horsehair turned into worms, and frogs, mice, and bugs were nothing but slime comes to life. It's not hard to imagine, spontaneous generation seemed plausible, in a world where slime were common, and one saw it happen every day. You see how belief in spontaneous generation conflicts with genetic thinking? If a frog comes from slime, it doesn't make much sense to talk about inherited qualities. But, as we mentioned, science marches on. And in the 17th century, a simple experiment successfully challenged spontaneous generation. The elegant demonstration was performed by the Italian Francesco Redi. Redi placed pieces of fresh meat in jars, some of the jars he capped tightly, with cheesecloth, while leaving the rest open to the flies. After some time had passed, Redi found maggots only in the open jars. The maggots grew, stiffened into cocoons, and finally emerged as fully formed flies. Thus, Redi has shown that maggots come from flies, and flies come from maggots. Nothing visible had been spontaneously generated from rotting meat. But the spontaneous generators weren't down yet. People still believed that fleas came from sand, weevils from grain, eels from the dew, etc. In turn, fleas, eels and weevils were disposed of by Anton van Leeuwenhoek, an amateur Dutch scientist, and the first to make systematic use of the microscope. Using his simple instrument, just an excellent eyepiece really, Leeuwenhoek followed the life histories of various small creatures. His treatise on the flea is a classic. He wrote, "This minute and despised creature is endowed with a great perfection, in its kind as any large animal." He discovered that, fleas like fish, dogs and humans were sexual beings. The Dutch scientist made two more great discoveries. He was the first to see bacteria, the ultra-small organisms, which have become so important in modern genetic research. And he discovered the existence of sperm cells. Examining semen, Leeuwenhoek saw millions of these tiny worms. One might say that thus discovery opened a whole can of worms, or that it spawned wrong ideas. For instance, Leeuwenhoek himself believed each sperm cell contained a complete new organism in miniature. The obvious problem was if this preformed organism was a boy, it must already have tiny testicles, which would contain miniature sperm, which it would each have even tinier preformed organisms. Ad infinitum et absurdum.